Welcome to Unclouded Eye. I am Ashley Brooks.
And I'm Ty Gowan.
And we are your source for astrological forecasts and cosmic chit chat.
And we listen and we don't judge.
Yeah, it's true. You can tell us anything.
Anything. I'm going to be like an Aquarius.
Yeah.
I won't judge. I'll just stick to the beat of my own drum.
Yeah. Aquarians are they're forward thinking. You know, they're already past it. They're already moving on.
And it's your season, Aquarius.
Yeah,
we're here to celebrate you.
Do you have any Aquarius friends that you know of?
Your dad.
Yeah, my dad is like the Aquarius I think of. Also, Dawn, who does our art, Dawn Aquarius, she's an Aquarius.
Oh, that's in the name.
Yeah, clearly. And shout out, Dawn. Thank you for your beautiful art.
Dawn, not a water sign Aquarius.
I know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ty's really stuck on the fact that Aquarius is an air sign and not a water sign.
I don't like false advertising. It makes me feel not great.
If anyone can get away with it, you know?
Aries could.
But Aries is so clearly a fire sign. If it was like, oh, Aries is actually an earth sign, that would be silly.
If it was like, well, it's Aries.
Oh.
Yeah. So the pun was right there for you.
Oh, I know. Look at me drop the ball. Look at me drop the ball.
That's right.
But we listen and we don't judge.
We listen and we don't judge. Hey, I've got some questions for you this will be the cosmic chit chat this time.
All right.
Because our topic is going to be history of ghost hunting, basically.
Okay.
And so before we get into your forecast, I'm going to lead you in a little bit on my topic.
Sounds good.
So Ash, here's some Q&A, nothing too hard for you, but how would you define paranormal investigation?
Okay, so I think it is the act of going into a space to try to gather information about what otherworldly entities might be there using a combination of scientific or metaphysical tools.
I love that.
Okay.
I'll accept it.
Okay.
In knowing that, when we started, what were you hoping to learn?
I think that I just wanted to understand it more because, you know, I think both of us had a lot of weird experiences growing up that we couldn't really define or we didn't have the language to fully be able to explain or explore. And so I was hoping that also I just wanted to go on fun adventures with my friends, if we're being honest.
That's real. I mean, but yeah.
But the reason that I chose, you know, paranormal investigating rather than like just road tripping or something, like, you know, I think because I really wanted to talk about it more. I wanted to like experience the weirdness that was out there and understand it because it, you know, it was a little baffling. It could be scary when you're a kid and you don't understand it. So I think I was just looking for answers.
Do you feel like you accomplished that? I don't need to get into the answers. But
you scratch the surface. You know, I feel like you could spend your whole life looking for things like that. It's very ephemeral. It's hard to like.
Our person today did.
Yeah. It's hard to really fully feel like, okay, I've learned everything that I can learn. I feel like I've learned a lot, but I don't know that I still have curiosities.
Now rapid fire coming at you. What do you believe can make a place, or can something make a place haunted? Yes or no?
Yes.
Do you believe in demons? Yes or no?
Not that terminology, no.
Okay. Do you believe in elementals?
Yes.
Or no? Okay. And Ash, based on the scariest place that you'd ever been with Haunt Me or otherwise, would you go back? Yes or no?
Yes. So the most scared I've ever been on an investigation was the bald man.
Yeah.
So for anyone who hasn't watched Haunt Me or just needs a refresher, so we went to the Greater Rumford Community Center.
You wouldn't think anything of it.
In Rumford, Maine. And this place, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different levels. It's like, you know, physical levels, floors, basement. And in the basement, there's all these tunnels that kind of go off of it. And we were there in, I think, 2014. And I was walking through. Were you there at that time?
I was not in the bald man group.
Okay. So I think it was Katie and me, and Nick was probably the camera person, I believe. And there might have been one other person with us, and I can't remember who it was, but I know Katie was there. So the two of us were walking, and Nick was behind me, but I was like the last investigator, and he was filming us as we were walking down this dark tunnel. And so I turned to see if Nick was still right behind me, and over his shoulder, I just see this like bald, like creepy, like hunched man, like over Nick's shoulder. And so I screamed and I like ran up and like pushed past everyone and like got to the front. And, you know, when I looked back, it was gone, but it was really scary because that was a very physical seeming thing. Like it looked like a real solid thing that was there, or a solid person question mark that was there. And, no one else saw it. So it was a little bit like, okay, am I making this up? You start to wonder if you just were seeing things or if you're crazy. But then years later, Anna went back there and she saw the same bald man in the basement.
Yep, I remember that.
And I wasn't there that time, but she saw it. And was it like crawling around?
I can't remember what she said. I don't want to put words in her mouth.
Yeah, I don't either. But I know she said she saw it in that same area. And we hypothesized that maybe that's its domain is down in the basement. Because I keep saying it because I know I'm saying bald man, but there was something that was not quite human about it.
Would you, if you had a way that you knew what was going to be in the same room in those catacombs and just needed you to go in there?
By myself?
By yourself. If you had to go have a conversation, it's a no?
Not by myself. I'd go with you or like a couple other people, but I'm not going alone.
I'm gonna lay down the law.
Yeah, no, that's no.
Gotcha. So that was a very scary figure you saw there.
It was really creepy. It was very almost like Gollum-like in the way that it was kind of like, hunched. I'm making a weird face and like, but no, it definitely didn't feel friendly. I don't know that you could like.
Got those Nosferatu vibes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. And yeah, what about you? What's the most scared you've been on an investigation? Doesn't have to be with Haunt Me because I know you've done other.
Yeah, it was actually, there was an incident at Fort Mifflin where I lost control of the situation, I would say. And I was way too junior to realize what was going on. And I actually had a woman named Deb Rossi.
Yeah.
And Carol and Jen with me that really had to calm me down after, but I was shaken. I think it's the moment when, and we were talking about this briefly, like off camera, but it was like the moment where ghost hunting went from a spectator sport to something that needs to be very much treated with sincerity and your full attention. You don't, if you go on a paranormal investigation, you're not there as a viewer.
Yeah.
Like that, I think, is what had to be trained out of my mind very quickly.
I had to go through that too. Yeah.
Yep.
There was that time at Parsons Field that we were getting a tour. It was daylight. It was, you seem like it feels perfectly safe. It's daylight. You're just walking through the building. We were getting a tour from that very sweet elderly woman who was like showing us around. And I felt like something had like attached to me. Like I just felt exhausted. I felt weird. I had to go outside. I had to excuse myself. I felt like I was going to faint. Yep. And yeah, it almost felt like something had just like stuck to me.
And we had to do that just a little bit of work and we pulled it out.
Yeah.
And so something had happened to you. It's the knowing that this isn't for entertainment.
No.
This isn't for just watching and pretending you're not involved. And there is no on and off switch. Like those are really big learnings. And I think those create the scariest moments in paranormal investigation, not the actual material itself.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that might not, like if you were watching us at home, like those moments might not even appear scary to you. Like me having to leave Parsons Field, like that might not, because nothing really happened that you could see.
Right.
But, for the person experiencing it, it's very intense.
It's wild. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that was a good intro. That was some deep cosmic chit chat.
Yes, I like it.
Do you want to dive in for the forecast then?
Yes. So Monday, January 27th, we have Mercury moving into Aquarius, and it's going to be there until February 14th. So at 9:52 p.m. on Monday, we have Mercury moving in there. And Mercury in Aquarius is all about free thinking for yourself, questioning what people lay down, coming to your own conclusions.
It's the spirit of the 60s.
Yes, it is the spirit of the 60s. It's counterculture. It's creating your own trends, not looking to see what other people are doing, just wanting to be innovative and inventive and rebellious,
Love it.
All of that energy we're bringing in because we have the sun in Aquarius. We have Pluto obviously is now in Aquarius. So there's a lot of Aquarian energy that we can draw from to help us to be more rebellious and
get into that fear and that loathing.
Why fear?
Lost.
Oh, okay. But yeah, just because they're a little eccentric.
It's the countercultural.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm there. I've arrived.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Wednesday, January 29th, we have Mercury conjunct Pluto. So as I mentioned, Pluto's in Aquarius. Mercury is now also. And so now they meet up in conjunction at 2:52 a.m. on Wednesday.
Conjunction. What's your function? See, I can't remember math, but like literally Schoolhouse Rock, just throw it in a rhyme. I've got it.
Phrases and clauses. Yeah. So Mercury conjunct Pluto is great for investigation, like digging deep into a situation and finding what's hidden and being like very dogged in your pursuit of the truth.
Veronica Mars.
Yes, it's Veronica Mars vibes, Sherlock Holmes. It's all that. At new moon, at 7:35 a.m., we have the new moon in Aquarius on Wednesday. So this is really wonderful for new perspectives, new inventions and innovations.
Specific to Aquarius?
Yeah. Well, because Aquarius is all about bringing that newness. It's good for like new technology. If you need to get like a new computer or new phone, like this could be like after this point, this could be a really good time to do it. You might be more like excited to learn.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Or like build a website, like anything techie. Like I feel like this new moon is really good for that type of stuff. But also it's good for like charitable work as well, and thinking about how you can help the collective. Aquarius is a very humanitarian sign. So it's all about like, you know, maybe finding a cause that you believe in to like donate to or spend some time with. Okay. On Thursday, the 30th, we have Uranus retrograde coming to an end at 11:22 a.m.
I forgot she was in it.
Yeah, Uranus, Uranus spends a good amount of every year in retrograde, and it's usually the last planet to come out of retrograde, like of the outer planets. So its retrograde cycle is a little off. Like the other ones usually end by the end of the year. Uranus it's usually like late January. So it's a little belated and
she's slow.
Yeah. So Uranus retrograde, Uranus is at 23 degrees Taurus, so it will be resuming forward motion. When Uranus is retrograde, there's a lot of like internal rebellion and a lot of like, building up like this desire for change inside. And now that it's direct again, we can kind of push that forward out and push that forward and out.
Push that forward out that's a new merch pin.
Oh gosh.
Push that forward out.
Push that forward out.
Yep.
And yeah, just really like going for it. Like you might have felt like this need for change kind of building up inside of you. And now is the time to kind of act and begin to figure out ways to introduce that change into your life.
Okay.
Now, Mars is still retrograde, which could be slowing our external progress down, but that doesn't mean we can't start to take baby steps toward change.
Cool.
Finally, we have on Saturday, February 1st, we have Venus joining up with Neptune and the North Node. So North Node and Neptune are very close to conjunct right now. They're really like sitting right on top of each other, but not quite there yet. And so Venus is going to conjunct Neptune at 11:33 a.m. And then a few hours later at 4:42 p.m., it will conjunct the North Node. This is really great for connecting in with others on a deep spiritual level.
Okay.
Have you ever met someone you just feel like you've known them before?
Yes.
This is a good day for that.
I had a former coworker at my last job that literally we met and I said, hey, this is going to be a lot of work to try to like ramp up to become friends. Are you interested in just skipping that? And she was like, yeah, I feel like I've known you. And so we did, and we're good friends now. Like
that's amazing.
Just was like, how about tomorrow I just start telling you inappropriate jokes and you let me know if it's ever not okay.
I had the same thing happen. So I have a coworker, great guy. He's awesome. Like he, really good guy. And I finally met his girlfriend at a wedding, and I was just like immediately like, oh, I could talk to you about anything. I was telling her like weird things I've never told anyone else. We were just having like this deep conversation, like right out the gate. And I'm just like, okay, like this lady is like amazing. I feel like I've known her before.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So yes, I completely understand what you're talking about.
So yeah, you could be making connections like this, or maybe having these people kind of come forward more, like people that you do have this close connection with, or like, prominent on this day. Maybe they're reaching out to you, or there's just a reason to kind of talk and discuss.
I welcome it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Venus conjunct North Node to like new opportunities in creativity and artistry as well.
Very cool. So maybe meeting someone new about a new project or passion.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could start like a new group project with people. Also really good for like a makeover. I know that's kind of like way off of what we're talking about, but Venus ruling beauty, like, a newness there.
If you can make time for a glow up, you should take that time.
Yeah, go get the haircut, go get the new outfit, have like a moment, you know, like in She's All That, when you come down the stairs.
Take the glasses off.
Kiss Me is playing.
Sixpence None the Richer.
I know. I love how when in those movies, when like somebody takes the glasses off, it's suddenly like they're a new person.
Shake the hair back.
It's like clearly she was already like very beautiful and just had glasses on.
Glasses are just that ugly, apparently.
I mean,
like, we can't have
so
it.
silly.
God damn.
The 90s were a weird time.
They were a weird time.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the forecast for the week.
Wow, that was great.
Yeah, it's a pretty positive one, actually.
I really like that one.
Yeah,
I guess.
good.
Thank you up there.
Yeah, thank you, Cosmos.
You're moving at the right speed at the right time.
Yes.
I appreciate that. So moving on to my topic now, before we go into the person of the week whose birthday it is. And I'm going to caveat, some people might not know who this person is, especially if you're outside like ghost hunting circles. I think you do. But I learned a lot more and I thought I knew a lot about this person.
Okay.
So
great.
we're going to dive into ghost hunting first, though.
Okay.
So ghost hunting, or paranormal exploration, as I like to call it.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that better? Like,
yeah.
Ghost hunting always kind of felt,
it's like you're poaching them or
I'm
something.
Not fishing. I'm trying to have a conversation.
Ghost hunt. Yeah. Like you just picture, I don't know. It feels much more like ghost busting, like you're trying to like suck them up or
I'm not busting
them.
anyone. The bald man busted you, so it's just like it's really not the same.
But I mean, I did go into his cave. That was his cave, and I went in and uninvited.
Yeah, you go hunting for a bald man, you're gonna catch a bald man.
Yeah.
So these kind of, again, we keep talking about spiritualism. It seems like a big theme here, but this is where the rise of it came in the late 1800s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a resurgence in the 1960s. So what I'm kind of like bringing about is that the questions that I asked you earlier in this episode are really common questions. I think a lot of people ask themselves, in these specific bumps on our timeline created, and maybe there's an astrological reason for it, but the spiritualism, the 1960s, not the 1980s, but then again, in the early 2000s, it was like these doorways opened, or these windows opened, where people could start asking those questions publicly and learn instead of just having those questions and burying them deep down. So I think the reason why it became more accessible in the 60s is because technology was more available to the layman, like reel-to-reel tapes, like you could buy that. So now you can go ghost hunting, like getting EVPs, film cameras, are starting to become, you can go to a grocery store and develop your film,
Right. It's not so accessible anymore.
People are talking about how to manipulate radio signals like we've done on Haunt Me, but like those were new ideas then. So I think that accessibility to technology is why the 60s were a big deal. But you can go back further than that and see these other bumps of like people always trying to do this, right? Even going on their means.
With whatever they had at their disposal.
Like for someone like Edison, who has a lot at their disposal, do you know what he tried to invent?
No.
That was specific to ghost hunting? He was really into finding a technological way to speak with the dead. Like that we are here, they are there was kind of his mind.
Okay.
And with the telephone being invented, he was like, we can do this too. And
ghost telephone?
He called it the ghost radio. Obviously it didn't work, but like he was adamant about trying. And so other people tried too. And then we hit the 1970s, Amityville, like becomes popular. And so people start getting national attention in a pop culture sense. And so we're on that upswing, right? But unfortunately, the Satanic Panic in the 80s really squashes that for quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that door closes and people stop having these conversations. So I think 80s on... I mean, like, because of your parents, you probably have a very different outlook on this, but I grew up and I did not feel like I could ask these questions about ghost hunting because it was on the tail of the Satanic Panic in the 90s,
people
right?
Were worried about it.
Stuff was happening. I was experiencing things. I remember I used to have, more often than now, would have dreams that would come true.
Yep.
And I remember telling you about my ice storm dream, where it was like 2 weeks before the ice storm. I had this dream where our town was covered in glass. I saw this stop sign in my dream that was by your parents' house, and it was knocked on its side, and it was just in the sun was hitting the glass in such a weird way in my dream. And I remember I actually said this out loud because I've told my dad about the dream. I told my mom about it. And then I remember coming home we took shelter during the ice storm, the legendary one.
Ice Storm 98, for those of you who don't know, is a huge deal in Maine.
That's right. I was 11 at that time. And I had that dream and I hadn't thought about it yet until we were leaving my grandmother's house. It had become safe enough to try to get home. And I remember coming down that road by your parents' house, and the stop sign had been knocked over by a plow, and it was completely encased in ice, and the sun hit it in such a way that it brought the whole thing back. So it's like, I've always kind of had just random things like that, and I would want to tell people about them. But I do remember this one time that I shared something very similar to a cousin in the presence of an aunt who told me that I better stop having those dreams because they come from the devil and that's him talking to me.
Oh, that's so scary for a kid. And how are you supposed to stop
a dream, right? Yeah. I was panicked though, and so it's like I grew up not talking about a lot of this stuff.
I mean, to kind of call back to what you said, like I felt comfortable talking to my mom, but I also came from like a Catholic family.
Right.
And so I did have a lot of like worry and fear around some of that stuff. And even though my mom was like very cool and open, like, when you grew up hearing about all that, you start to wonder, you wonder if something terrifying is going to happen to you.
And you don't go beyond your mom with the information too. Probably.
Right. I knew very early on not to tell people because there would usually be a couple reactions. Either people would think I was very weird and would be like completely turned off from that, or they would be actually there's three reactions. They'd either be weirded out by me, completely scared by what I'm saying, and it would just like, terrify them. I remember telling one friend at a sleepover about like the haunted house I had lived in. And she was like so scared. She was almost crying like the rest of the night, So it's like, I don't want to do that to my friend. And then the third reaction would be like being treated like a sideshow and being like asked all these questions.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Look how entertaining you are for me.
Yeah.
Right
so
now.
Those are the usual reactions that I would get as a kid.
And I think those reactions are still real.
Yeah.
Nowadays where it's like I go to parties and people do want those ghost stories. And it's like, do you want the gentle flavored one, or do you want something that I think you can't handle,
yeah. And it's hard because you want it makes you feel at times like a little separate from other people. So that's why I think in thinking back to what you asked me, I think that was part of my goal with Haunt Me. I didn't want it to feel so taboo anymore. I wanted to talk to people about it and have it feel more normal.
And that totally plays into what I think happened in 2004 when Ghost Hunters.
That was huge.
It was huge because it had the message of this is happening to people. You no longer need to be othered if you're having experiences. Mm-hmm. Here's a polite and friendly way of how to interact and understand with what's going on in your environment. I think it gave us permission to ask those questions I asked you on a more public stage and not have such specific reactions as you had mentioned to it. So with that, I think ghost hunting has had a lot of different forms over the decades, and it's going to continue to evolve while people are willing to explore. I just think people need to, as we continue moving forward, and if TV was the way that we did that beforehand, I need people not to listen to Zach Bagans.
No, there's so much fear mongering there.
You're right. Exactly. We might have gone too far with the television now. Same way as news. News is entertainment, and this is all hyper entertainment too.
Right. Chances are good if somebody's getting scratched by a demon in every episode, it's probably not real.
Right. Especially, like people are like, how many ghosts have you seen, Ty? It's like in my whole life, and that was with a decade of really focusing on the paranormal, I have seen with my eyeballs 2.
Yeah.
That's my expectation.
It's very rare. Yeah. So it's interesting because I don't want to deviate too much from what we're saying, but I talked about this on Patreon recently I have this, the higher tier on Patreon where we do deep astrological study. And I actually talked about a transit that has been going on off and on for the last 100 years, Neptune sextile Pluto, or 80 years or so. It will be 100 years by the time it's done. And when it peaks is when you notice like an uptick in people trying to
bumps
communicate.
I just mentioned?
Yeah, it correlates perfectly with it. So I'm just going to give you a really quick rundown. If you're interested,
super interested,
you can always come over to Patreon and the Pearl tier that I offer. We do deep dives like that. So Neptune sextile Pluto started in around like 1940. And so it was peaking around like 1945 to 1960. So especially when you look at the people that were born at the beginning of that, when it was really acute, that's a lot of the people that were coming of age when in the 60s, when we had like the Woodstock generation, when we had people that were more interested in the counterculture and maybe like more spiritual topics. And then as they got a little bit older into the 70s, there was like new age movement that was happening. Then by the time you get to the 80s, you're seeing more of the people that were born after that movement kind of coming to like adulthood. And there was more of that satanic panic and more fear around it. Then it was peaking again from 1978 to 1988 when we were born, or around when we were born. And so that's like as we were coming of age in the era of ghost hunters, or in the late 90s when like there were more movies about like witches, and it was like becoming more like popular.
When the people who can consume are old enough to appreciate it is when it's happening.
Yes. And so there's going to be one more wave of it that started 2024 and it's going till 2034. So I think that by the time we get to the early 2040s, there's going to be another spiritual renaissance of some kind like that.
God, we just need a portal gun at that point.
Yeah.
Cross, like in between realms. That'd be perfect.
There's going to be something in like my prediction's 2042. There's something significant happening.
That's when we get the ghost radio that Edison tried to make over 100 years ago.
I'm here for it.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I would have never thought that before.
Yeah.
That's great.
It wasn't until you started to explain it that way. I'm like, oh, that kind of correlates with what I was just talking about on Patreon last week.
Fantastic.
Or I guess it would have been a month ago now.
Well, the person that we're going to talk about today published their first book in that timeline of one of the Neptune Pluto sextiles. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about someone who was born on January 26, 1920 in Vienna, Austria. And the time is 7 a.m.-ish.
Yep. Okay, so we have an Aquarius sun here with their moon in Aries and Capricorn rising. So their sun is opposing Jupiter and Neptune, which are conjunct in Leo. So I'm seeing that this person, I don't know if you remember, but Ben Franklin also had sun opposite Jupiter. So this is somebody who's very curious, who has a big personality, a legend that kind of precedes them. And the sun opposite Neptune would make them very open-minded and very fantasy-oriented, like very idealistic. Yep. And like if they don't really like the reality they're in, they're just going to focus on a different one.
Yeah, nailed it. Are we done?
That's it.
Yeah.
So they have Mercury in their first house in Capricorn, squaring Mars in the 10th. I'm wondering if there's a little bit of like frustration, possibly a temper that can come up with this person.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
From what I read, constantly being told no will do that to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's like an impatience and a little bit of an annoyance that I'm seeing coming through, especially like a professional capacity.
Yes. Yep. That would be the only capacity I would know, of his frustration.
Okay. Moon conjunct Chiron in the 4th house makes me wonder if there was something with this person's mother. Do you know anything about their relationship with their mother that would be significant?
God, he's not like a wicked well-known historical figure, okay. So I really didn't have much about his family life.
Okay, so the way I would read this is maybe a sick mother or an emotional issue with his mother.
Okay.
But if we don't know, maybe that's just something to deep dive into later.
I think something might have happened because there was a lot of influence from his uncle, and I didn't see much from his parents.
Yeah, so. Maybe his mother passed early, or there was a weird, issue there. His Venus is really, I heard you say he, so now I'm saying he.
Yep.
His Venus is very well aspected. It's sextiling over to Mars. It's in the 12th house in Sagittarius. This would make for somebody who's very much like a dreamer and really like creative and artistic as well. There's like a unique flair, but also this need to really explore and to push the boundaries of what he's creating. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like it's a really cool chart overall. Like there are some frustrations that I see here for sure. And it does feel like there was like either a lot of red tape that was like a contention, but the moon in Aries, there's like moon in Aries people, they might blow up. They might have tempers that come up, but it's not going to be like, you're going to like be over it as soon as it's out. It's like you blow up and then you're like, oh, I'm over it.
Steam release.
Yeah, exactly. But other people are like, whoa, like you're totally fine. They're like, yeah, like I just had to get it off my chest.
Yeah.
So
sounds good.
That might be something here.
Cool. Call out more as we go.
Okay.
Because we are going to dive into a little bit about the man who invented the term ghost hunter.
Okay.
From his 1965 book on the topic. And this is Hans Holzer.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you learned, do you know anything about Hans?
You talked about him earlier in this podcast, like when we were first starting out, and I hadn't really, I remember somebody commented on it being like, Ash doesn't know who Hans Holzer was. And I was like, oh no.
Well,
I'm learning.
Now
everybody.
You're about to.
Ty was like the ghost. What you got to know is Ty was like the ghost hunting like expert to me when I was starting out.
That's sweet.
And so I learned from Ty. So even though I'd had lots of experiences, I wasn't as well versed with this world.
Well, I learned from books, you know, so like that, you helped me center, you know, and get on board with what's going on. Like a lot of psychology books, stuff about from Hans Holzer. But like he had plenty to choose from because he was a very avid writer. And he really, like you said in your chart, that he wanted to just explore the unknown. Like that's what he wanted. And this was like a last frontier for him type of thing.
Yeah.
So in his lifetime, he'd write over 120 books on the occult and paranormal in
general.
A publication called The Witch's Almanac interviewed him in 2009. It states that he was inspired by ghost stories that were told to him from his uncle as a young boy. And then he would in turn enrapture/terrify his kindergarten classmates with the same stories.
I love that.
So he's a storyteller, which I like that. So growing up in Austria, he was able to study history and archaeology before, unfortunately, fearing for his safety in the region due to the World Wars. And his family fled to New York City in 1938. There, he studied at Columbia University. He learned Japanese.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, again, pushing the envelope and not Aquarius, right? He's doing what other people aren't doing at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like the thing about Aquarians is we might like think about that now and we're like, oh, that's cool, like learning Japanese. But like back then, who was doing that?
They didn't have the owl.
Yeah.
You know?
Duolingo was not available.
No, he had to do it.
Yeah.
So he also doubled that study with religion and parapsychology.
Yep.
So it really just fueled his interest in the unknown from there. And then we'll jump ahead to 1965 when he releases the book Ghost Hunter. And it's, received with mixed interpretations and reception, kind of like how you say when you share your experiences of the paranormal.
Yeah.
There's 3 outcomes.
Yep. People are like, wow, you're a freak, or oh my God, I'm terrified, or wow, like let me tell other people so you can tell that at my party.
Exactly. And the third one's the worst. So
I mean, it might come from a good place, but
right. Yeah. Stage showing people
is very traumatic for me.
It's like making people juggle, you know? Yeah. So I'm happy that with the reception that he got, he instead decided to double down on the field. And so he starts showcasing his beliefs in mediumship, working with them and psychics, and trying to do more spirit photography and trying to just find ways to capture evidence of the paranormal. And even though most of what he did at the time was called pseudoscience, guess what? It still is.
Yeah.
So it's not like he was doing a detriment to the field. It's just like they're in paranormal exploration. There's variables that you can't account for, so it can't follow the scientific method.
Right.
So you're just throwing darts and hoping you get lucky a lot of the time.
Yep.
In 1977, his experience in the paranormal, because he's been doing it for a decade at this point, leads him to his most famous case. And I thought this was actually really interesting. He opened the case for the Amityville Horror, and I always thought it was the Warrens.
I didn't know that.
So I think if I read this right, he is the one that kind of opened it up so the Warrens could go in. So he brings a famed medium of the time named Ethel Myers to the DeFeo murder site. At that time, it hadn't been called the Amityville Horror. Yeah. And I remember hearing this legend, and it's so off base from what actually happened. But like I remember hearing this really triggering the early Amityville stories. is that Ethel Myers claimed that an Indian chief named Rolling Thunder possessed Ronald DeFeo and caused him to murder his entire family on that site. And when Holzer wrote about that, people came forward and were just like, this is an unfounded claim.
Okay.
Like, and again, nowadays it's just like, great, let's,
blame it on
the Native Americans again. So I have some trouble with that. And I also have trouble that is the story that made his book get turned into a movie, So ick a little bit there. So I don't know if in his stars it says is fine with embellishing or running with things.
Mercury square Jupiter. Yeah. Like Mercury square Mars. Like there could be some frustration. There could be some like wanting to take shortcuts because you're getting frustrated.
Yep. I remember you saying that you're getting frustrated and embellished or whatnot. But regardless of the embellishments, what I kind of want to spin for the positive side here is that the thoughts he was having were very progressive for their time. So like an example of this, it's 1960, 1970. He straight up says the devil isn't real, which I thought was for 1960. You're going to call that out.
Yep.
He said that all paranormal things that we interact with relate to human beings in one way or another. And
I think it's energy. I think it's just all energy.
He was kind of calling it that like all hauntings are human-based ghosts.
Okay.
And I'm not in that train.
Yeah, I'm not there either. But I do think that human energy can make things feel haunted sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Also, he lived most of his life as a vegetarian, which I think, again, in the 60s is really hard to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So he gave up all animal products except for dairy in the 70s. So, again, he's ahead of the curve there.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I'm just going to leave you with a quote of his that I liked from his book. So I just thought that this was a good quote and really summed up his personality in general. Is fear is created by not understanding something.
Yeah.
It's just simple.
Lack of knowledge.
And I think that it can be applied to so many more things in life besides paranormal exploration.
That's why I research so heavily. I'm like always like, if I don't know something, I need to like research it. And that's how I deal with anxiety, is learning.
That's exactly what he then goes on to explain that quote about,
Yeah.
like everyone would do better if they dove in is kind of understand what you're afraid of, and then that fear goes away.
Exactly.
So he lived quite a life, and he was always involved in the paranormal up until the day he died, which he ended up passing away in his home in Manhattan, having published 120 books, like I said, on April 26, 2009.
Wow, that wasn't even that long ago.
No, I thought he was long past until I saw that. So
Jupiter conjunct Neptune too would give you it would give you a talent with the supernatural. It's in the 8th house of like study of like death and the beyond. Like just seeing that, I just noticed that. So that's
So he was following that blueprint as early as he could.
Yeah, there's just a fascination with the unknown and a desire to explore it. Like that could have manifested in any number of ways. Like maybe he would have been an explorer or like a traveler or something, but that's just how it manifested for him.
He went for death.
Yeah, exploring the final frontier.
I love that.
Yeah.
This is the journey of the ghost ship Enterprise.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming with me on that, Ash.
Yeah.
I know it was a little self-serving because it's
not
about,
self-serving.
not a major celebrity, but...
Well, I think it's interesting. And is there a book of his that you would recommend?
Yeah, I'd honestly recommend Ghost Hunter.
Okay,
by
cool.
his. And I can give that to you. I got it upstairs.
Yeah, I would love to read it. That sounds interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
It's old, too, which I like to read about their limitations,
Yes.
And so I thought it was really cool to read it from the standpoint of nowadays.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ty. That was great.
Thank you for coming today.
Yes. Thank
learning
you for
about
coming
Hans.
to my TED Talk.
Cool.
We listen and we don't judge.
We listen and we don't judge, Hans. You missed the base there a little bit, but
yeah. All right, everyone. Well, hope you have a wonderful last week of January, and we'll be back next month
for more Aquarius stories.
Yes.
Talk to you soon. Unclouded Eyes stars Ashley Brooks and Ty Gowan. It's produced and directed by Nick Nordfors. The music is by Ashley Jane Cecilia and Jay Caron. Community manager for us is Erin Cross, and the art is by Dawn Aquarius. It's presented by Haunt Me on Haunt Me Official on YouTube, and you can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Unclouded Eye and Patreon at Unclouded_Eye. We're supported by Michael Thorne and Mara Moon on Patreon, so join them up, especially on the Pearl tier, to get some really cool deep dives.